For any of you who don't know us, the New York Tech Alliance is a nonprofit serving the tech community here in NYC. And at the core of our mission, we drive diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. And this is a representation of our community in our reach in all parts of the boroughs, all parts of the world. And we have a special guest tonight. He looks just like you, Christian. And I just want to share a little bit about our structure here. So the Tech Alliance merged with Civic Hall a couple years ago, back in the fall of 21. And Civic Hall was acquired by what's called the FedCap Group, which is a large nonprofit focused on, well, I'll get to that here, and focus on four things: economic well-being, education, health, and workforce development. And its roots go back to 1935, when it was formed to help disabled vets get jobs. And it grew through acquisition over time. And today it's a collection of 23 organizations operating in the US, Canada, and the UK. And to learn more about them, you can go to their website at fedcapgroup.org. You're in our new home here on 124 East 14th. The land is owned by the New York City Economic Development Corporation, of which Daria is a part of, and she'll tell you more about that and herself in a minute. We occupy floors 2 through 7 of this building. It's about 85,000 square feet. And we have 2 floors of meeting space, floors 2 and 3, and 2 floors of classrooms and collaboration and co-working space, which are on floors 5 and 6. And the 7th floor is under concept design right now. Some things that are being kicked around are makerspace, robotics, and gaming. So we'll update you as that progresses. And I want to thank both Rachel and Chris here from Fragomen, who have been on this journey with us since the beginning of the year. And thanks so much for you guys for being here. Is Chris? There he is. Okay, I see you. And lastly, the Civic Hall is offering free trials for membership here. So any of you interested, go ahead and take a scan of the code, and the next cohort will begin July 1st, okay? One thing I did forget to mention, hi, welcome, is that we are recording this session, so I just want to make you aware of that. Anybody who's camera shy, step to the back of the room. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Daria, who's going to host this evening. Daria, thanks for being here.
Of course. Thanks, Doug. Good evening, everyone. So I'm Daria Siegal. I'm the Vice President at the New York City Economic Development Corporation. We are the landlord of this building, but hopefully that's not the only reason why I was invited to moderate this conference. So for those of you that don't know, EDC is a quasi-governmental agency. We service the economic development arm for the city of New York, and we have been investing in the tech sector for over 15 years. So I sit in our innovation industries team, where we're focused not only on tech, but also life sciences and the green economy, fashion, media, and creative industries as well. And so what we do is we invest in these sectors to make sure that they will be catalyzed to grow, to create good paying jobs for New Yorkers. Very proud that the tech sector today in New York is over 355,000 people. Startup Genome recently re-ranked us as number 2, as the second largest tech ecosystem in the world, tied with London. And we're doing really, really well. I will acknowledge, of course, we have a long way to go, particularly around equity. There needs to be more opportunities for the tech sector to look like the rest of New York. And so that's something we continue to invest in and support. I'm happy to talk more to all of you about EDC, but the reason why I think I'm moderating this panel is that we are very excited about AI. And so right now I'm working on an AI strategy for the city of New York, thinking about where we need to support the growth to ensure it continues to grow, that industry is adopting AI technologies to innovate, create more jobs. We're very optimistic about that. I know people might have different opinions about AI and workforce, but also really focus on how do we upskill New Yorkers to get the skills that they need for future jobs, whether you're technical or non-technical. And then on the other side of this conversation is around immigration. So that's something we deeply care about. Of course, homegrown talent is of great importance, but we also want to have open doors and have a great community of international talent coming to New York. It's been really incredible. Like Signal Fire recently issued a report about more and more of Bay Area tech workers are moving to New York higher than any other cities in the country. So we want to see that continue to happen, but we want to see that happen internationally as well. So that is the point of this conversation. So really excited to be here at Civic Hall with New York Tech Alliance and with my esteemed panel. So to kick things off, I'm just going to ask each one of my panelists to introduce themselves, say a few words, and your relationship to this conversation tonight. So Christian, if you want to start.
I'll start. Hello everyone, my name is Christian. I'm the founder of Stork. We're a product studio focusing on impact. So we build digital and web products. I myself came to New York a bit like the talents that you were mentioning, if I may say, 10 years ago, 11 years ago. Had experienced a bit of the journey and now growing the business, getting into AI, and facing the challenges from the other side. So I'll try to bring a bit the Lambda experience to the table.
Hi everyone, I'm Natasha Persad. My company's called the HR Experts. I've been in human resources for, let's just say 20 plus years to be kind. Anything more than that, I'm going to feel the grace setting in. Mostly in the Fortune 500 space. Actually, been partners with Fragomen on many of the companies that I worked with. Immigration is a very interesting conversation. It could be either a heated conversation or it could be a solution conversation. And for what we're hoping to share with you tonight, it's how it's a solution-based conversation and maybe try to address some of the challenges many people see with hiring talent overseas and why is it more of a strategic solution versus a reactionary solution. So I'm hoping that we can get some answers like that tonight.
Thank you. And strategic solutions where we come in. My name's Chris Gregorio. I work for Fragomen, and I'm joined by my colleague Rachel Beardsley as well. We're the largest immigration provider in the world. We have offices in over 60 countries. We have services in over 170. We have our team primarily focuses on U.S. inbound work, but we handle large companies to small scale individual work, private practice. So we kind of run the gambit. We reached out to Doug. We've been having some conversations, as he mentioned, throughout the course of this year, dating back into last year. It's really neat to see, this impact. The building is tangible, but I think a lot of what's happening is in the undercurrent as well. And so that's looking really what we want to focus on with this conversation. We do say if you have any questions, feel free to jump in. We'll have a Q&A as well, but really appreciate everyone's time today.
Great, thank you. So Chris, starting with you, I think I just want to set the stage of where things are today. Could you give us kind of high-level overview of the state of play around AI and immigration and kind of the tech sector at large?
Sure, and no crystal ball and not looking forward. This won't be a political conversation. We'll try to focus on the here and now, but obviously we are looking ahead. But presently, we have seen a lot of employers, again, from large scale to small size, capitalize on some of the initiatives that the Biden administration has started to implement. Executive orders dating back last year have really opened up various avenues of relief for employers of all sizes, for employees, really looking at either cloud computing or AI, individuals with STEM degrees, for example. It's been really neat to see how these avenues have opened up and how some of the terms of art, which may seem a bit intimidating. So for example, there's a term, a national interest waiver, which is a path for a green card for individuals who may not know much about that option. It seems like a sticker shock, if you will, in terms of what that means, what the impact of that is for that individual or for maybe a company sponsoring that employee. But we've seen a lot of success. And so as a result of that, we've seen a lot of clients capitalize on that success. We've seen the avenues open more and more as it relates to, again, individuals coming from STEM degrees and outside of STEM degrees as well, but really within STEM. There was an executive order October of last year, which really opened up a lot of avenues in AI, and we've really started to see more and more expansion there. We're hoping that continues. We don't know. Again, not to make this a political conversation, but we've really seen the interest sort of strike while the iron's hot, if you will. So yeah, I think that's kind of a foundational element there for why we're here and sort of where we've seen the trends move to.
Great. So Natasha and Christian, could you share a little bit about your perspective? Like, why is this important to your businesses or to your clients?
It's interesting to see, and to piggyback off of a little bit of what Chris said, the landscape is evolving and changing all the time. Technology is changing in terms of what the different solutions are. I mean, AI open source, it was like didn't it just have like a 1-year anniversary? And now that's the only thing everybody knows and talks about and so forth. So to meet that demand, we have to look around and see, do we have the talent to meet the demand? And a lot of times the answer is no, because it's not the focus in terms of what the STEM studies or what it's going to end up being. So strategically, you have to look outside for other resources, solutions, whether it's bringing talent in or offshoring the talent. It's just to keep up with the demand. And I think a couple of weeks ago was Tech Week here in New York. And I don't know if you guys saw what I saw, but everything was about AI. That's the only conversation everybody was having. Even the accelerators were saying, oh, we're all changing. And I'm like, great, how are you guys changing? They're like, we're focused on AI. I'm like, okay, that's not really changing. You're still the most difficult accelerator to get into, Techstars. But needless to say, you have to think about it. Is there enough people in the United States that can do AI? No. So we have to look for other solutions so that we can meet the demand and grow the needs and so forth for what the different challenges are.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, also, I've been in the Tech Week, and I saw that the AI has a very broad understanding, but there's a lot of instances where people use AI when it's not really AI. And there's a big need, that's one thing for sure. I think there's also a bit of misunderstanding at the level of decision makers. So it's the talent that are needed are not always available, and they're not always clear to see. So also to build on your point, we're going to need to have these talents into the company once you grow. They have two options: either work with the people abroad or bring them in. And if you keep them abroad, then you have the data security, data access issue, and obviously the taxes. So if they say outside, the money goes outside. So that's a bit my perspective on the topic as an entrance.
Great. Chris, could you talk about, from your client's perspective, what specific option strategies you've seen them leverage?
Yep. So I mentioned that term, the national interest waiver. So just to take a step back, that's an I-140 immigrant petition. It generally goes hand in hand with the green card application. So it sets someone's spot in queue and allows an individual to be able to file for the green card. What's interesting with that national interest waiver, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, is that it sounds very intimidating, but based on what we're seeing in current adjudications, if someone has that background, particularly in STEM, and the reason why I referenced the executive order from last year is that the Biden administration came out and basically said if someone has a STEM-related degree, they'll put a greater strength on that application. So generally speaking, it gives them a foot up from those who don't have a STEM degree. And not to say that we haven't successfully filed those I-140s for individuals who don't have STEM, but based on that executive order, it really positions those with that background, not just AI. I know, Natasha, as you mentioned, that seems to be the sole and only focus for a lot of individuals, but not just AI, but anyone with the STEM-related degree. So that has provided an individual the ability to move forward with the green card process. It's interesting to see in terms of evidence as well. And this will dovetail a little bit in terms of the next application that we're seeing. And that's called either the O1 or an EB1. They sort of go hand in hand. One's a visa. The EB1 is a similar aspect as it relates to the national interest waiver. It's an I-140 immigrant petition again. The interesting thing with the EB1 is that it actually can be self-petitioned. So therefore, you don't need an employer to sponsor an individual. Now, with the EB1, it does have a bit of a higher threshold than that national interest waiver. The EB1 has a variety of criteria without getting too into the weeds, but there's 8, and someone needs to have citations or publications. Years past, and when I first started working in the field, I worked a lot with these EB1s, and those publications were generally your journals, citations to a journal, and that's evolved. So we see a lot more usage in terms of digital media, so blog posts, for example. So what we try to explore when we work with clients is to think a little bit outside the box. So it's not just how the guidance is written or the regulations are written in terms of publications, and I think at least my mind historically has always went to what comes up in a journal, but thinking a little bit more creatively there to explore how an individual can meet that criteria. And the great thing with the EB1 extraordinary ability, or even that EB2 national interest waiver, is that it positions you and it allows an employer, if an employer is sponsoring an individual, to bypass some very long, expensive steps if they want to sponsor someone for a green card. So it bypasses a labor market test, for example, that some of the common processes entail, which can be very expensive. So for example, you have to post in the New York Times if you want to sponsor someone for a very common green card process. And I know many people aren't really looking to the New York Times for a job advertisement, but they have to. An employer has to do that. Whereas the national interest waiver, the EB1 extraordinary ability, allows someone and an employer to skip that process. So we're seeing individuals look at it as a greater area of relief and solution because it's faster, but we're seeing employers really embrace these options because it's cheaper too. And there's a benefit there, not only for the employer, obviously with a bottom line, but also for that employee able to get the green card. You can save some money on filing extensions for an individual to sort of keep them in the country, to maintain work authorization and travel authorization. So there's a lot of benefits that are coming from that. And those are some of the main solutions we've been seeing with clients of all sizes.
I think the EB5 is EB5?
EB1.
EB1? EB1 is interesting because it gives you longevity with that person who is coming into the country. However, depending on what it is that you need the solution for, it may be not that length of duration that you want somebody here for. So then everybody keeps complaining that there's not enough H-1Bs and so forth. And recently we had the CHIP Act. So you have all of chip manufacturing come back to America. Like I came out of semiconductor and like I built everything in Taiwan, Korea and everything. So now we have like TSMC, I'm having a conversation with them and they're building fabs here in America. And they're like, what do you think we should do? I'm like, a blanket out. That's like the most obvious thing because they're not going to keep their talent here. They're going to take it back to Taiwan at some point. So I think what's great about when you are able to partner with a firm like Fragomen and so forth, the idea is to sit down with them and look at the totality of what your business plan is, how long you need the talent for, what's the duration of it? Because if you do the EB1, that's great, but then what happens to that person if you downsize them and lay them off and things like that because whatever they were working on is no longer needed or it didn't work out? You need to have if you know that the project or the duration is for a temporary time, you may want to look at alternatives so that you can return them back or bridge them in terms of what the solution is. Because I feel like anytime I have a conversation with someone regarding visas, it's always H-1B that comes out of their mouth. It's like, it's tied together, but there's so many other visa options depending on what your business solution is or what your goals are. That's why it's good to sit down with an organization so that you can look at what your overall strategy is.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to be Captain Obvious here because I think one thing you guys didn't mention about the EB1 and O1, which my dad is an immigration lawyer for about 50 years, probably longer than he wants to admit. So I worked for him for 2 or 3 years. I think it's important to note that these are extraordinary ability visas, so there's a higher threshold in terms of accomplishment. I don't think that was mentioned on the panel, so I don't know if I missed it, but I just think that might be important for people to know that the people that you're going to do an H1 for won't qualify sometimes for the EB1, so I just think that for the layman here, might be important to let them know that.
Yep, yeah, absolutely. So again, that the EB1, the extraordinary ability, as I mentioned, there are 8 criteria, and publication citations are a few of them. But to your point, an individual needs to have at least 3 of the 8. There's an assessment process. So anytime that we have an individual come to us or an employer come to us, and I'll jump back to one thing you just said, Natasha, on the H-1B. So the H-1B lottery, and this will tie in. So the H-1B is a lottery for anyone who isn't aware. I think many of us are. The system changed about 5 years ago now, and now there's a pre-registration system. So in years past, essentially, employers would file these H-1B petitions for someone that they're sponsoring. They would send in everything, and then council would receive return petitions for those who weren't selected. There's 85,000 tickets a year. This changed about 5 years ago. Now there's a pre-registration system where The submissions are put in, just an online submission is put in, and then a lottery is run. And then those individuals who are selected have petitions filed on their behalf. And then there could be multiple lotteries. The first year it worked out great. It worked out well. I was surprised. I thought there would be more kinks. Anytime that the Immigration Services unveils anything, there tends to be some issues, but it actually worked out quite well. But then we saw bad actors. So last year, not 2024, but 2023, there was about 780,000 submissions for about 85,000 tickets. So if you do the math, initially there was about a 14% selection rate. So to your comment before about everyone's focus is on the H-1B, yes, that is the bread and butter visa. However, due to selection rates being 14%, they ended up running multiple lotteries, and it went up to about 24% last year. And just this year, after the first wave, it was around 24% as well. We're hoping if there's an additional lottery, which could run in August, maybe we'll see that tick up. But even if it ticks up, we're still seeing, and probably something around 30%, you need to have an option for the other 70% of individuals who you're not potentially going to receive an H-1B lottery. And so as a result of that, we've seen employers and individuals look to some of these options and become a little bit more aggressive. I think with some of these options, I think clients realize and appreciate that if this talent is truly key, they're willing to spend the money and take the risk from a cost standpoint. Really, there's no negative if you file. There's no prejudice held to that individual to an employer. But if that person is so important to that employer, I think we see clients more and more willing to take that risk for a term like an extraordinary ability or a national interest waiver. So just wanted to kind of tie that into the H-1B because it's interesting. It continues to be such obviously a focal point for U.S. immigration, but it's hard to rely upon it.
But I also think it's a focal point because that's what people know.
No, exactly.
Like when you tell people about the L visa, they don't know the L visa. Mm-hmm. I know the L visa because I work for multi-international companies, and it makes sense because then you can hire somebody in the local, like in Poland. I can hire somebody in Poland and then transfer them over on the L visa. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why we were talking about strategies, like solutions like that gives you an opportunity. So even if they come over on the L visa, they can still file for a green card if they're interested in it. And that's what you did. This brings us back to Christian. Yeah, we tied it in.
Yeah, I'd love to hear like more about your entrepreneurial journey rather than like a micron-sized global foundries, et cetera. Like you're getting started here in New York and running an international kind of firm.
So yeah, I mean, to start with it, I'm a French citizen, so I came in with the J visa. The J visa allows people to stay after the 2 years. So, and I had already a company in Lebanon, small company, so it's doesn't need to be a multinational as long as it's a company abroad, from experience. And that's how I transferred myself from Lebanon to the US on the L visa, just like Natasha mentioned. And I 100% support that. It's really difficult. You have to be very creative if you don't know what you're doing to either get a really good legal team or do a lot of homework. And it ends up being much more expensive to do it on your own. But I think one point I wanted to that I'm pondering about is that the immigration process is very slow, and AI moves really fast. So by the time I need my talent, my paper is still not done. So it's really difficult for me to hire somebody for an AI job. So I don't know if there's going to be any improvement on that front to match the speed of the technology that you're building the immigration.
Chris, could you give us a sense of timeline for that?
So it depends. So there are many applications that do allow for a premium processing. The fees for that have jumped significantly. They're right now $28.05 to get a result in either a 15-day or a 45-day window, depending on the type of application that you're filing. And with that, there could be audits or a request for evidence or an RFE, which is a common term for anyone involved, which can further delay case processing. So it could be several months if you're going under that more expedited route. It could be over a year, 8 to 10 months, sometimes over a year if you're not. So to your point, Christian, that's often a challenge about meeting an immediate need with a reliance upon immigration. But that's where I think really future planning comes into play. And what we're starting to see many clients do is to look at their employees who, let's just say they sponsor for an H-1B petition in a lottery, and maybe they're on a STEM EAD, and that STEM EAD is valid until another year and a half, as opposed to waiting and hoping that individual maybe gets selected in a future lottery this year or next year, really taking the chance and pursuing an option now to try to keep that talent within the United States. Whereas in years past, I think we saw some employers waiting to see maybe there is that additional selection. But I think last year sort of spooked a lot of people. When we saw those numbers come out, 780,000 registrations was a lot. This year, though, it dropped significantly. So not to put a total cold spell on everything, but the numbers dropped to about 460, I think. There was a lot of press from DOJ and from the immigration services about a lot of the bad actors. They found that, at least just based on some reports, Wall Street Journal and whatnot, that there were some employers who were filing fraudulent registrations. And I think that led to a chilling effect this year and improved. And we're hoping that continues to improve as well.
So Christian, going back to you, can you talk a little bit more about your experience going through the process? Did you seek legal counsel, as you were mentioning, and what would you do differently or advise to someone now?
So I did seek legal counsel. The answer was H1B. And so I tried to look at a bit more different ways based on my profile, my nationality, and my plans. So that's how I landed on the J1 under a company to be able to sort my things out. Then we applied for the L1 when I started the company in the US. So the one was valid only for 1 year, and that needed to be renewed based on the finance of the company and so on for 2 more years, and then apply for the green card. So it's what it means for an entrepreneur is that I cannot plan my growth because I don't know if I get a big client, if I get a new employee, if I'm going to be there in a year or two. So that's also, I think, affects the way the business owners would look at their company and their growth. And if I would do anything different, 100%, I would marry an American woman.
She just moved. You're so lucky. That's his wife with the baby. She just moved.
Good timing.
Good timing.
But the joke aside, I think it's more about understanding the process, and there was a lot of unknown for me. So I think with the right partner, understanding when to expect what, I think it would make my journey clearer. So with hindsight, I think I did a good trail, but just didn't know. So it was every month, are we going to get an answer? Are we staying? Are we leaving? And so on.
Yeah, great. Natasha, could I get like a temperature check from you? Like as you work with clients, how have you seen trends kind of going in leveraging these different policies over the last few years?
In terms of trends, it really goes up and down. It really depends on what the product is that they're focusing on developing and so forth, and how much people that they think that they need to increase it. I mean, if I was to pool all the recruiters, I would say 75% of them would say there's not enough talent in New York City, but it's just because this is new concepts that's coming into New York. I mean, for the longest time, New York was finance, commercial real estate, and so forth. We're now building a tech resurgence here to some degree. And a lot of times people are going to Boston and Cambridge and so forth if we look at East Coast. So getting talent into the New York area is very difficult, but then also do they know the right languages and so forth. So I feel like the landscape in New York is growing and everybody is so hungry, but then at the same time, how are you going to meet everybody's needs? So we try to help them bridge with ideas of different solutions and so forth. It's very important also to always know, to Chris's point, and even what Christian was talking about before, how much visas are available, because that's the hardest conversation to have, because the minute you're competing with Meta, Amazon, Google, and you can't compete with those salaries. If you're a small startup, if you somehow, by God, have the money, that's great. But you're competing with a limited amount of talent. They're getting pulled in the same direction, and the cost is so astronomical in terms of what they can give them because of the talent pool being so small. So looking towards immigration is a great solution, but then the question is, how long can you wait for that talent to be on board, available, placed, and so forth, before whatever it is you're building changes, because technology is constantly changing.
I have to advocate for New York City. We're graduating more STEM talent than any other city in the country. So we have our academic institutions are graduating great talent, a lot of international talent, and we need to make sure that students are able to stay that they have the visas to be able to stay here. So just need to counter that a little bit. And when you say talent, you're talking about AI talent, or like what are the trends you're seeing?
I'm saying talent in totality in terms of technology. I mean, last year I had a client that wanted 20 React Native developers. That's the hardest thing to find because that's what Meta hires. So you're competing with different companies based on whatever your solution is. So yes, New York City is graduating a lot of STEM people and so forth. The challenge is, are you willing to take a chance on somebody who may not have the amount of experience that you want and so forth and things like that? So it's a lot of convincing with founders and business owners why they need to go that route because of capacity and financing and so forth. Even, it was interesting, like I have this person, her name is Kendra. She's so lovely. She goes to Howard University. And because Howard and most of the HSBCUs decided to break relationships with Google because of certain things that they said about African Americans and things like that, she can't get an internship. She's willing to intern for free. So if anybody needs an intern, I have a great intern from Howard University. But at the same time, just being able to find opportunities like that is getting hard because the first thing is, no, I need somebody with experience. I need someone who's going to be able to hit the ground running and turn these solutions around for us. So I think it's just being able to marry both worlds and try and find a good balance between them.
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Please.
So now with
Take my job away.
with the advent of remote work, so now we have the L visa, which moves management over to countries. Do you think there's something that would come to leverage the remote employees of a company at any grade to move into the country and to hit the ground running, but also not waste on the time that they need to onboard somebody?
So it's a great question. The US lags behind. Right now, there's not what is commonly referred to as a digital nomad visa. A lot of countries have implemented them. Unfortunately, we do not. So that is a common challenge to your question, Christian. And it's a good one that we get from clients a lot is, well, I'm looking to come into the US for a short amount of time. I can work remotely. My services continue to benefit my office in London. I'll be on foreign payroll. Don't worry about it. There is a worry about that. And so it's asking those questions. And I think that's really at the underlying kind of the thread of it all is that you want to ensure as an employer that you're remaining compliant. I'm not a tax professional, but appreciate there's probably some tax ramifications in there, but our focus is on immigration. So unfortunately, the US doesn't have that digital nomad visa. There are many countries that do. We're just not there yet. So as a result of that, tying back into what we've been saying, it requires an emphasis on an employment sponsored visa. And that's where either you look to an L1, so you're transferring an employee who's been stationed with you in Poland for a year and you need to transfer them to the United States, or maybe there's a nationality that gives rise to a visa type. And there's a few out there, Chileans, Singaporeans. I know the TN is kind of common with Canadian and Mexican nationals, but there are some other visa types which do allow for individuals to transfer in much more quickly. Australian nationals, for example. So you look to those as options, or you look to the other options that we mentioned from the outset and get a little bit more aggressive. To your point as well, Natasha, there is a competition with talent with those with Meta and Apple, but they're having layoffs. So I think that as a result of that, maybe an employer is willing to take a risk if they see someone that they identify as a key target in an area where there's a significant need, and give it a shot. If they're willing to support the cost, there's a good business case there. You get all the facts, you ask the questions. I think if I was an employee or a student, I think just trying to learn and ask as many questions is key. If I was an employer, trying to learn and ask as many questions is key. I think really the information and communication is just so important for everyone who's involved in the process. For us as counsel, that's what we do from the beginning, is gather as much information and documentation, kind of run through the pros and cons, assess the risk, and then from there have a conversation about what we think could set up as a potential business case, and kind of leave it into the hands of an employer with that information and that knowledge to take the next steps.
You brought up a good point, like how if you're going through like Australia, it might be a little bit faster. Is there certain countries that if you were trying to do a visa with, it takes a little bit longer in terms of that process? Like for me, anytime I bring anybody in from China, I feel like it takes 2 to 3 years.
So China's interesting in a few different ways. China, obviously, with the pandemic, was one of the countries first where we saw consulates close. China has improved a lot recently, which is great. The one thing that we've seen, though, for Chinese nationals is that there's an increased chance of what's called administrative processing. Administrative processing essentially is a check by the State Department. So for many individuals who are foreign nationals who are looking to travel into the United States, really Canadians aside, so for any Canadians, you don't need to usually go through this process. You need to obtain this sticker or visa stamp in your passport. Chinese nationals, there's an increase in this administrative processing security clearance check that's really happening across the board. So while we've seen improvement in visa processing in China, where we've seen issues is where Chinese nationals going to London or Germany, for example, there's a higher risk that that consulate tied in with the State Department will ask for additional information, will delay the visa stamping process. So that's something to be mindful of. In terms of countries, India, just given the fact that it's a high saturated country, continues to be backed up. This year, Olympics, French national, right around the corner, but the Olympics are really causing a logjam in Europe. So Paris, Amsterdam, Belgium, that's where we're seeing a higher chance of delays or really lack of visa appointment availability. And we're seeing individuals go to other countries. And then the other big question we receive is if I'm an Australian national and I'm on a visa that allows for that Australian national or an individual who doesn't want to travel back to their home country. Because really, first and foremost, we always recommend if an individual is going to go get that visa stamp, that sticker for their passport to allow for travel, we recommend going back to home country. There's a lot of reasons why. The main reason is it usually decreases the chance that there are those security clearance checks. But we often hear, well, I don't want to travel back to Australia. I understand it's a long ride. I have a 18-month-old. If I had an 18-month-old and you put me on a plane to Australia, I probably wouldn't come back, or I'd stay there for a long time. We've seen some consulates become more accepting of individuals who are what are called third country nationals. But we've seen some consulates and countries just put up the wall, Canada being one of them, where they're not really allowing individuals to travel in to get a visa stamp. They want to dedicate their efforts, their time to the nationals and residents of that country. So it depends and varies. And the frustrating thing, being in the front lines of this all, is a lot of the information online is bad. So there's a website which provides you with appointment dates. There's a website with some of these websites that will tell you some information, but it's really in the weeds. And a lot of the information that's online, published by the State Department, while it's improved, it's not great. And so it's hard to really assess without having the ability to go through the process. So yeah, there are some consulates which have just put up the wall, some which are still delayed, but knock on wood, we're leaps and bounds from where we were back in 2020 and 2021. Really, a lot has opened up, knock on wood.
Question? Yeah. Firstly, just on that, one thing I can recommend personally is joining a Facebook group or something like that if you're from a particular country. So I'm part of the Australians in NYC Facebook group. It's actually probably the best way to obtain appointment availability because someone's just been looking. So that's a good tip. Secondly, Chris, I was wondering, you talked about criteria and different types of visas and the rules that come along with visa and green card applications, but are there certain themes or qualitative factors that employers and employees can look for given the policy focus from the Biden administration or from a White House administration that might not be obvious but might help craft a narrative that supports that?
Sure. So the first point is, well, I've heard about that Facebook group. I've heard people tell me it's great. I go down and get my visa stamp and then meet up with people and go to the bar and party afterwards. That is true, actually. So I've heard about that Facebook group. In terms of the factors that may not be there, it's really digging into the individual's background, tying it into what I would say the tangible, practical impact of that individual's role. At the end of the day, a lot of these officers who are reviewing these applications, they're not subject matter experts, but if you are able to tie in an individual's background and the impact of their work to something that's real world, so electronic banking, let's just say a client is working on electronic banking and maybe this individual is a software developer for an e-banking platform. So what's the impact? What clients are they servicing, for example? Or what clients are you servicing that you're looking to have this individual come in and work on this platform? How many transactions is that impact? Trying to quantify. And I think that's the other thing that we always look to with clients as well. you could put a lot of words on a page. At the end of the day, from our experience, officers, they want to see numbers. So if you're able to quantify what's the revenue generation of this platform that they're working on, maybe what's the impact to a client from a cost savings measure, for example, efficiency. So we try to really get into the weeds, put numbers to it, and then also make it just more approachable for an officer. So it's not just words on a page. So it's something that an officer can relate to, sort of what that impact is of that individual.
Do you feel that with startups, that's a bit of a challenge for them if they're not revenue generating? Let's say they're just Series A funded and so forth. I mean, they have some good cash in the bank, but they have enough to hire this person, but they're not revenue generating yet. Do you see that as something that holds them back from processing faster?
So not necessarily holding, it's a good question. We've seen this with some of our smaller clients as well, where there's maybe a RFE or that request for evidence that I refer to. If it's not revenue generation, it's not a be-all, end-all. There are other factors that we would look to within the business. We will look to just prospective growth. So if you are a startup and you have your business plan, which presumably you do, we handle startup visas for businesses. It's okay if there's not that revenue right then and there, and it's not a significantly high number, but the long-term growth. And how are you supporting that? And again, I think you can put words on paper, but you really need to demonstrate to an officer who's reviewing it, well, how are you going to be supporting this visa and supporting the employees? You'll say you'll hire 10 or 12 employees over the course of the next couple of years. Well, how are you doing that? What will be the impact of your work, and tie it into the real world there? So again, not a be-all, end-all. It's
and
helpful.
Does the venture data, like getting a new investment, does that validate?
It would for some visa types, absolutely. So contracts, for example, with different organizations, different clients, there are some visa types where they want to see that startup have a turnkey operation when they're entering the US, when they're going for that visa stamping process, having contracts in place, having that data in place. It is prospective in nature. So you are reliant upon this data that you've put together. But if you have a clear, concise business plan that you're presenting to an officer, we've seen success there.
I'm going to ask just a couple more questions and we'll open it to the audience. Sorry, Chris, I know we're giving you a lot of airtime, but it's very valuable. So, elephant in the room, I know you alluded, this is not a political conversation, but there's an election.
Mm-hmm.
What do you foresee? What is that potential risk with a change in the White House?
So, I mean, needless to say, the data speaks for itself. Under the Trump administration, we saw higher rates of denials. We saw inconsistent adjudication. We saw individuals who were in the States for 15 to 20 years, who were on an H-1B, who would have an extension filed and it would get denied all of a sudden out of the blue. And that obviously is a major impact to an employer. It's an impact to that employee, their family. I think that if that returned, I would expect it to be what we saw and worse, kind of on steroids, if you will. It led to delays in all sorts of processing. It led to higher increases in what employers need to do from a pay perspective. So there were some talks at the end of the Trump administration about increasing some of the prevailing wage rates, so essentially what an employer has to pay to an employee. So we saw some of that get tabled as the Biden administration took over. I think a lot of sand in the gears. So I think a lot more of those administrative processing requests that I was mentioning a couple minutes ago. Yeah, delays, higher scrutiny, greater inconsistency. With that said, we still saw success. It dipped a bit. And I think that was an impact to all industries. I know STEM and AI brings us here today, but that was really clients across the board for employees across the board. So I would expect that to return with vengeance. I think what we see in the news, we focus a lot on the business side of immigration, but I think what we see in the news is conflating the business immigration with what we're seeing down at the border. Obviously not to focus only on the business side or not to focus on what's happening at the border in terms of those who are seeking asylum, but they're very different topics. But I think what we see in the media and the news happening is, not to get I feel like I'm saying this again, I just don't want this to become political, is that they're becoming intermixed. So I know, Natasha, you had mentioned it just about the need for foreign talent to fill some of these voids. They're there. I mean, we're just not seeing we're not seeing the higher rates of graduates, of US graduates in some of these really niche fields, but we're seeing that conflated with what's happening at the border. And I think as a result of that, I think we could expect some restrictive policies to take place if that did come about.
I'm going to just do one final question to each one of the panelists. So we're obviously in the middle of like a Gen AI craze, but we're still at the early days of AI. I think applications across all of our industries that we're going to see continue to evolve. So curious from each of your perspectives, what kind of future trends, either optimistic or pessimistic, do you see around immigration and tech policy in New York?
Well, I think I'm generally optimistic about the whole situation. I see a lot of smoke at the moment, a lot of use of AI that's justified. Specific to immigration, I'm very hopeful that this will help in speeding up the process and also clarifying the information and the validation of the documents, so that whoever is applied has a better understanding of what's happening, maybe like USCIS agent, chatbot.
Creating a new business model.
I'm hoping for it. Anybody want to jump in? But in general, I think it's going to grow and then like shake down a bit, solidify, and then move forward. And I hope more people will come to New York.
I am very optimistic and positive about it. I mean, my parents are immigrants to this country, so I definitely would like to see the conversation continue to grow and be able. The reason why you also want the talent to come into New York is because we have to learn from each other. Then if we aren't able to learn from each other, we're going to stay stagnant, and then we're not going to be able to grow the talent that we have already here. So I'm optimistic that some of the laws and the changing, whoever's in the office, doesn't derail what needs to happen, because we're getting smarter, we're getting more knowledgeable about what the benefits are with immigration. You're able to see kind of an ecosystem being built, and you're able to see that, oh, wait a minute, there's some opportunities for us to have knowledge exchange and being able to grow. And I love this younger generation that wants to work overseas. Like, I think that's amazing. Like, when I was in college, I was like, leave America? No. But I think it's awesome that we're having this knowledge exchange going on right now. It's a little bit of a new Wild West. And I just hope to continue seeing it grow. And I hope that immigration is not something that stops it, the laws and the possibilities. And I'm hoping that this conversation, everybody leaves a little bit more knowledgeable, but understands you have to be strategic. Immigration should be a strategic conversation, not a tactical or transactional, or this is what I have to do.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a stressful process, and we see that from all different perspectives, from an employer, from an employee. So I think while AI is and will continue to be, to your point as well, Christian, sort of forged ahead, it is a long, winding, stressful process. And so I think it's important just to ensure that those conversations are happening. It's not a transaction. It's not just submit this and wait. There could be challenges. There's uncertainty. There's a lack of transparency. And I think that's where the usage of AI can be helpful, but I don't think it's necessarily going to present all of the successes, or I should say it won't provide all the abilities to navigate and look around a corner, but I think it will help you get there to peak.
Great. So I think we'll open it up to questions. We had one over there.
So, I have a question. As a founder, I mean, most countries don't deal with this concept of states, but if I founded here in New York, but I wanted to move everything, like let's say, for the sake of an extreme example, Texas. Right. Does that hurt my company in any way and hurt any employees I might sponsor and bring over?
It's a good question. So I hate to say this as an attorney type answer, but it depends. There are visa types, and we saw a lot of this come up within the last couple of years with telecommuting and with office closures. So it depends on your employees and their visa types. It could lead to, not that it's not doable. In fact, it's not the most difficult process to do, but if you're an employer in the United States and you have employees who are on visas, before making that move to Texas, there are definitely steps that need to be done. in order to ensure compliance from the U.S. immigration perspective. So it varies on the visa type, it varies on the employee, and varies on the employer. There are some steps that need to take place. I think it's just all about planning ahead. But yes, there are some requirements because some of the visas are tied into something that you file with the DOL that locks in a wage rate for that employee on an H-1B, for example, or on an E-3 visa for those Australian folks. So it can vary, but yes, there are steps that an employer would need to take.
Hi, thank you so much. This has been really helpful. I run a CAP exempt H-1B visa program, so an alternate path for individuals who aren't selected in the lottery. And I have a lot of individuals who come to us, they're seeking employment, their OPT is expiring, and they're looking for solutions. As we have these discussions, I'm hearing a lot of individuals say that there's an increase in companies that have set policies of what they will and will not do for sponsorship. Are you seeing that as a trend? What are you advising to individuals as they navigate those conversations? Because a lot of what is necessary given barriers is creative thinking, right? Go do an L1, even though that's not something that a company has written in a policy. So are you seeing that as a trend, and how are you navigating that with companies?
So in terms of the policies, I think a lot of the policies are hard, not by choice, it's by financing. So they didn't have me yet, and then when they do get me, the conversation changes dramatically. But a lot of the conversation is a finance question because they're hitting a burn rate, they're doing what their numbers look like, how much they can invest. And I think visa costs, they have gone up, but it's still manageable versus trying to hire someone at a higher salary rate because you're pulling them from another company and so forth. It's still more manageable to do that. But the policies, I think a lot of the times the policies that's in play is because it's driven finance-wise, because they don't know what they don't know, and maybe they have little to no guidance from attorneys. And I think the other hard thing is that if somebody comes in and is like, oh, I'm with this company, I just got downsized, I need another H-1B, I have an H-1B that's lasting like a few more months, can you sponsor me? Those are always hard conversations because if you're not budgeted for that H-1B, you're not thinking to sponsor somebody because that's an additional cost. So again, finance, it tends to drive some of those things. That's what I've seen in terms of policy.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've seen clients come to us saying, I'm trying to draw in talent from here. This individual has an offer from, again, we've thrown out Meta. They're claiming that they'll sponsor them immediately. Our policy is that you need to be an employee after a year or two, and then we'll visit the conversation. And before you know it, before the words are out of that individual's mouth, that person's signing their offer letter with whoever that big client is. So we are seeing some clients revisit. It's difficult though, because a policy is a policy. So it's hard to make exceptions to that policy without having that larger conversation. But we are seeing some clients where there is that talent that they want to bring in, potentially revisit or shorten that number. But it's a great point. It's a cost benefit. But yeah, we're seeing that. We're hearing that from clients as well. Just the competition is so fierce. How do we compete with someone who's saying, we'll sponsor you for a green card immediately if we don't have the costs or the ability to do so, or we have this policy in place that we just can't. So we're starting to see some clients potentially roll that back.
More questions?
I'm coming at this from a completely different perspective. I'm a communications person. I've done a lot of work in the public sector group with Salesforce, and I've done some AI stuff with regard to like AI and so on. So as somebody who's been doing this for a lot of years myself, I feel like the general mood of technology and the technology industry has changed so much. Like we started off with a term like the information superhighway. We had Steve Jobs up there in his turtleneck telling us how the iPhone is going to make our lives so much better. Now there's like, it's so dystopian and so negative. And from a generalist perspective, every day there's a new AI solution or there's a new feature or a new that, and there's like a bajillion different things. And you don't know which like, who cares? Like, what's the difference? Because there's no storytelling. And it's almost like the OpenAI, blame them too much, but their approach to like storytelling is just like drop a stink bomb in the middle of the room and run out. Because like my wife is a teacher and like ChatGPT came out of nowhere and just totally messed up her world. No guidelines, no guardrails, no nothing. So I'll get to my question, I'm sorry. So I guess, not to get too meta, but are there any practical solutions that you can offer? Because everything you've been describing is just like this terrible whack-a-mole. Are there any AI-driven solutions to like get people from A to B to help them figure out this landscape? Or is it really just like a total mess?
It's not a total mess. So I'll approach it in two ways. The first of which is that an individual who's progressing AI forward, that can open up an avenue of relief for that individual from an immigration perspective. I do think that there is a lot of misinformation out there. I mean, I think back when Ask Jeeves was around at first, and there was a lot of bad information with Ask Jeeves. So I think anytime that you have a technology take over or a platform or whatever it may be, there's always going to be bad information out there. It's just about utilizing that information, but I think vetting it, so cross-referencing it. So to the first part of it, yes, I think AI in itself, for someone who works in an AI and takes the field forward, provides and could provide that individual with an avenue of relief to move forward in U.S. immigration. I think we'll see law firms, employers use AI to help build job descriptions, to tie in, to further expand upon that individual's role. Not that you want to rely solely upon AI, but I do think there will be a usage standpoint that will allow more efficient creation of a job description or a profile, that will allow that employer a business plan, that will allow their employer to at least get some thoughts to take it forward and then personalize it a bit more. So I don't think it's all bad, for sure. I think it's like anything. You need to make sure that you're vetting it and doing that due diligence on it. I don't know if you all feel.
Yeah, I have a thought on that. So on the vetting, I'm wondering personally also about the vetting part of a technology that's less than 1-2 years commonly known. And now you want to bring a lot of people in, and these people have applications, and they're getting vetted based on their AI skills that they have built over the past 6, 8, 10, 12 months. And there are obviously specialists who've done this for 20, 30 years, but there's a lot of also wannabes. And I think this might be a challenge to navigate. I think maybe it's an opportunity from the legal side and maybe a challenge for the immigration side on figuring out, is this person an AI specialist? Are they using AI? Do they build on top of AI? Are they using ChatGPT or GPT integrations and they call themselves AI specialists? So that part I think is going to need to be cleared out. But at the same time, we don't have time to wait for that. So we have to move fast enough to keep the ball rolling, knowing that there'll be some false positives at some point.
Yeah, and I've had conversations with Homeland Security, and they are trying to figure out ways to adopt AI without worrying about, the thing is, if you remember, if you look at the paperwork, there's so much personal information that goes into that paperwork. The security alone is so hard, but as the end user, to what Chris was saying, job descriptions being used for AI, for visa applications, you could create a generic job description. There, things like that helps and so forth. And then you have to place the job, the ad, and all that other stuff if you're doing the green card, right? So now all of that is automated as well too. So there's ways to make it faster that you can utilize AI as long as you're not infringing on someone's personal information and it's protected. Then it's a partnership, if anything, with AI.
Yeah, I think I didn't need to be too negative. I just feel like
you're from New York, right? You're from New York, right? Isn't that like on
well, I'm apologizing, but I'm not really apologizing. I feel like people are dying for good news. I feel like they're just drowning in negativity, so that as subject matter experts, if part of what you're doing here tonight is standing up and talking about what you've seen, what you've done, I feel like as an extension of that, just go out there and talk about like what has worked for you, what even just like the A to B sort of solution that you were just mentioning, that kind of stuff, very helpful. Because to go back to what Chris was saying a few minutes ago, immigration is such a third rail type issue, and to distinguish, to create a lane for like professional marketing, say, have a Wall Street Journal story about what you folks are doing. Like, that would be so inspiring. Like every time there's a positive story about technology, I get happy.
The positive is that's what's bringing us here is that executive order. That's the positive, and I think that's what is bringing a lot of us in the room today is that it did provide that avenue, that third rail. I guess maybe that's good or a bad thing. I think you were referring to it maybe.
Third rail's bad.
I know, but I wasn't sure if you were referring to it in a good or a bad way. Usually bad, but I think it would provide it provides that avenue of success. You just need to explore. You can lean upon AI, but you can't put your full faith in it.
Right.
I think that's like anything, though.
And I think I talk to a lot of younger people in our work, and like the enthusiasm and excitement of how to leverage AI is just so palpable and really exciting. And like for your wife, the way that AI can be used in the education space, right, for tutoring and all these sorts of things, the wraparound services, the things that we're not able to do at scale is really remarkable. So I'm extraordinarily optimistic about it. I understand your dystopian approach, but I think not all news is scary news, and this is going to be very exciting.
I mean, I feel like there's some almost like a resistance to storytelling. I don't understand why. It feels like we've settled into this habit of like negative media hygiene. Like I don't know, maybe this is a generational thing, but it's almost like a lot of the founders take their cue from like Elon Musk, and they think, I don't need a publicist. I don't need somebody to help me shape what I do. I'm just going to run it all from my toilet at 3 o'clock in the morning.
So just one more comment, and then we can move on to some more questions. But I will say, I think the New York tech scene is very different than other tech ecosystems, and the AI for civic good, and like the way the city is thinking about it, and like AI for cancer research and diagnosis. Like there is so much great opportunity, and I agree there needs to be more narrative and storytelling around that. But I know we asked you a new person over there.
Oh yes, I have a question about EDC in general. So my name is Park. I'm an international student and currently a master's student in data science. So all of these topics feel very relevant to me. I want to ask about the EDC in general. I have read about the work of the organization through like the different initiatives to grow the New York economy, especially in tech and like higher industry. So I was wondering, like, for example, their program to grow opportunity in life science, for example, I think was really interesting. I was wondering, is there any kind of new initiative in this space, in the AI?
Yeah, I mean, we're very, as I was mentioning, kind of dovetails nicely around the opportunities of AI and robotics in the life sciences sector are really going to speed drug discovery, all this incredible work. So we have a big initiative called the Science Park and Research Campus in Kips Bay, which is, we have a $100 million RFP out right now to build a new life sciences hub in Kips Bay, all about the applications of advanced technologies in life sciences. And it's going to bring together 3 different CUNYs. So a 2-year program, a 4-year program, and a graduate program, as well as like DOE STEAM education. So we're very excited about it. That's a few years out. It actually just passed zoning, like ULURP, technical stuff yesterday. So this is moving forward, and it's going to be really exciting. I'm happy to talk to you afterwards about more of our work in that space. Any more questions?
Question for the immigration side is,
Sure.
You guys were talking about paths in and that the U.S. isn't doing a good job for the digital nomad visas. What countries are doing a great job with digital nomad visas, and where do you see people going to?
You called me on the spot. My focus is on the U.S.
Estonia is always used as an example.
Canada, I believe Canada has taken advantage of some of the restrictions.
It's not over.
And some of
Woke us up.
I didn't drinking yet, so I'm sorry.
some of the islands as well. Just saw a lot of individuals traveling down there. Barbados. Yeah, exactly.
What was that one?
Barbados. Yeah, we've seen countries take advantage of
I
that.
bet if you Google it once, all these cities
Yeah.
are going to hit you up. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I just thought it was the right place to ask.
Yeah.
Hi, so I'm an engineer, but I'm by no means like an AI expert. I'm still kind of building up that skill set. But I'm also a DACA recipient, so I was wondering if you guys have come across cases or if there's any trend of any companies kind of helping the sponsorship for, I guess, status adjustments for DACA recipients by chance?
Yes, and that's a layered answer with a layered question as well, just given the fact that DACA is so uncertain right now. But yes, we have seen employers sponsor individuals who are on DACA. There is unfortunate uncertainty with the program, but as of right now, it continues to remain viable. So we have seen employers sponsor individuals for visas or for green card applications. It's something that does require a real look at an individual's background and profile just to ensure what options may be available for that individual. But to answer your question, yes.
Can I just add, if
Yeah.
I can just build on that just a little bit, you may be aware of the recent announcement by the Biden administration related to individuals who have DACA or dreamers more broadly, who are married to U.S. citizens, or where they have a U.S. degree. And while the Biden administration still needs to provide more explicit instruction in terms of what those steps will be, what those programs will look like, I think more broadly what the Biden administration is trying to do is balance some of the more restrictive policies that they're putting in place at the border to still say, we are pro-immigration. We see this need, we see this population of people, and we're trying to create pathways for those individuals to stay, whether that's through marriage to a U.S. citizen and creating a pathway there, or potentially to an H-1B. So I'm not sure if you read the press release, and it was pretty high level in terms of everything that they were saying, but I think that's what's underlying all of that, where the administration is trying to take some positive steps forward.
Okay. I was mainly asking because I've only worked for smaller employers so far, and unfortunately I did have one instance where, because I have to renew every 2 years, there was one time where I didn't get the renewal before the expiration, so they had to pause my employment for a couple months while I'm waiting for that. And given the stress of all of that, I'm kind of wondering if maybe you guys have come across special types of companies or any sectors that I might want to look into who will probably be more likely to give sponsorship to DACA.
So it's interesting. I think it's less driven by the employer or the industry and more driven by the options available to the person. I would say at a broad level, employers are very supportive of individuals who have DACA employment authorization, and they want to help and they want to be supportive. So I think it's more of the individual circumstances in terms of, did the person ever have unauthorized stay, or getting into the nitty-gritty of some of those details that really dictates what options may be available.
Okay, thank you.
Just to add on to that for 1 second, it might be helpful. The President's Alliance for Immigration and Education is an organization that's launching a program for DACA recipients to change status to cap-exempt H-1Bs. We're launching a program with them, and it might be interesting to look into the organization. They're very focused on DACA recipients and change of status.
Okay, thank you. That's awesome. Sorry, what was the name of it?
President's Alliance for Education and Immigration.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I want to leave time for networking and having some drinks outside. So thank you all for your questions. I think